Have you ever wished you could just stop caring? Stop feeling that crushing weight every time someone criticizes you, rejects you, or walks away? Have you ever fantasized about becoming one of those people who seem completely unaffected by the chaos around them, who never lose their cool, who never seem to break? I know you have. Because if you're here listening to this, you've probably spent years trying to build walls thick enough to keep the pain out. You've tried to be stronger, tougher, more resilient. You've told yourself that if you just stop caring, if you just harden yourself enough, nothing will be able to hurt you anymore. But here's what nobody tells you. The harder you try to become untouchable, the more trapped you become. Every wall you build to keep pain out also keeps you locked inside. Every mask you wear to hide your vulnerability becomes a prison. And worst of all, the more you try to numb yourself, the more sensitive you actually become to everything. This is the paradox that destroys most people. They spend their entire lives trying to avoid emotional pain, never realizing that avoidance itself is what's causing most of their suffering. It's like trying to stop quicksand from pulling you down by struggling harder. The more you fight, the deeper you sink. So let me be clear about what this is really about. This isn't another motivational speech telling you to be strong or think positive. This isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. This is about something far more powerful and far more difficult. Learning to be truly unmovable, not by avoiding your emotions, but by mastering them completely. The people you admire, the ones who seem unshackable, who handle crisis with calm, who never seem to be controlled by their feelings. They're not numb. They're not pretending. They've simply learned something that you haven't yet discovered. And that's what we're going to explore together. But I need to warn you right now, this journey requires you to face things you've been running from your entire life. It requires you to look at truths that will make you uncomfortable. It requires you to admit things about yourself that you've been denying for years. If you're ready for that, if you're truly ready to stop being a victim of your own emotions, then stay with me. Because what I'm about to share with you has the power to change everything. Let's start with the most important truth. What hurts you is not what you think it is. You believe the problem is external. Your cruel boss, your unsupportive family, your ex who broke your heart, the friend who betrayed you, the world that doesn't understand you. And yes, these things happened. Yes, they were real. Yes, they caused pain. But here's what you need to understand. These external events are not what's hurting you right now. What's hurting you is the unhealed wound inside you that these events touched. It's the story you're telling yourself about what it means. It's the conclusion you've drawn about yourself based on what happened. Think about it. Two people can go through the exact same traumatic experience. One person emerges stronger, using it as fuel for growth. The other person is destroyed by it, unable to move forward for years. Same event, completely different outcomes. Why? Because the event itself is not what determines your suffering. It's your internal relationship with that event. It's the meaning you assign to it. It's how it interacts with wounds that were already there, wounds you may not even know exist. This is why you can be completely fine one moment, and then someone says something seemingly innocent, and suddenly you're devastated. They didn't hurt you. They triggered something that was already hurting inside you. They pressed on a bruise you didn't know you had. And here's the really difficult part. As long as those internal wounds remain unhealed, you will continue to be vulnerable. You will continue to overreact to small things. You will continue to be controlled by your emotions. You will continue to suffer, no matter how much you try to control your external circumstances. You can't fix this by getting people to treat you better. You can't fix this by avoiding situations that might hurt you. You can't fix this by building higher walls or wearing thicker masks. The only way to truly become untouchable is to heal those internal wounds so completely that there's nothing left for the external world to trigger. But before we can heal these wounds, we need to understand where they come from. And that requires us to talk about something most people spend their entire lives avoiding, the parts of themselves they've rejected. From the moment you were born, you've been learning what's acceptable and what's not. Your parents rewarded certain behaviors and punished others. Your teachers praised some qualities and criticized others. Your friends accepted certain parts of you and rejected others. Society told you who you should be and who you shouldn't be. And slowly, piece by piece, you started to split yourself in half. There was the good version of you, the one that got love and acceptance and approval. And then there was the bad version, the parts of you that seemed to cause problems, that made people uncomfortable, that didn't fit the mold. So you did what every human does. You tried to kill off the bad parts. You tried to suppress them, deny them, pretend they didn't exist. You shoved them down into the basement of your psyche and locked the door. And you told yourself, if I can just be the good version all the time, everything will be fine. But here's the problem. Those rejected parts didn't die. They're still there, locked in that basement, banging on the walls, demanding to be acknowledged. And every time someone or something touches that door, even accidentally, you experience a surge of emotion that feels completely out of proportion to what's happening. Someone makes a small criticism and you feel rage. Someone is slightly unreliable and you feel abandoned. Someone achieves success and you feel worthless. These aren't rational responses to present events. These are the rejected parts of you screaming to be heard. This is why you feel so out of control sometimes. It's not that you're weak or broken or defective. It's that you're at war with yourself. Part of you is trying to be perfect and acceptable, and another part of you is fighting desperately for acknowledgement. And that internal war is exhausting you, draining your energy, making you vulnerable to every little thing that happens. The answer is not to fight harder. The answer is not to suppress those parts more effectively. The answer is integration, bringing those rejected parts back into the light, accepting them, acknowledging them, making peace with the fact that you are not just a good version or just the bad version. You're both. You're everything. This is what true emotional mastery looks like. It's not about being perfect. It's not about only having positive emotions. It's about being whole. It's about accepting all of who you are, even the parts that society told you were unacceptable. When you do this, when you truly integrate all parts of yourself, something remarkable happens. Those external triggers start to lose their power. That criticism that would have devastated you before, now it's just information. That rejection that would have crushed you, now it's just a person making their choice. That betrayal that would have destroyed you, now it's just someone showing you who they really are. You become untouchable, not because you don't feel, but because nothing external can shake your internal foundation anymore. You know who you are, all of who you are, and you've made peace with it. But let's be honest, this process is terrifying, because it requires you to look at parts of yourself that you've spent years trying to forget. It requires you to admit to feelings you've been taught are shameful. It requires you to acknowledge desires you've been told are wrong. It requires you to sit with your anger, your jealousy, your neediness, your fear, your pettiness, your selfishness, your cruelty. Not to act on these things, not to let them control you, but to acknowledge them. To say, yes, this is also part of me, and this is where most people fail. Because acknowledging these parts feels like admitting you're a bad person. It feels like giving up on being good. It feels like surrender, but it's actually the opposite. Acknowledging these parts is what allows you to truly control them. When you deny them, they control you from the shadows. When you acknowledge them, you bring them into the light, where you can actually work with them. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to drive a car, but there's someone in the back seat that you're pretending isn't there. They keep grabbing the wheel, hitting the brakes, causing you to swerve. You keep trying to drive as if they don't exist, but they keep interfering. That's what your rejected parts are doing. They're there, they're affecting your behavior, but because you won't acknowledge them, you can't do anything about them. The moment you turn around and say, okay, I see you, I acknowledge you exist, you can start to work with them. You can set boundaries. You can negotiate. You can integrate. This is the real work. This is what separates people who are truly emotionally mature from people who are just pretending to be. And it's uncomfortable. It's messy. It's not the neat, clean, inspirational story you see on social media. It's you sitting with your ugliest thoughts and darkest feelings and choosing to love yourself anyway, choosing to accept yourself anyway, choosing to integrate these parts rather than continue the exhausting battle of trying to destroy them. And when you do this, when you really commit to this work, you start to notice something incredible. The things that used to devastate you start to feel manageable. The people who used to have power over you start to lose that power. The situations that used to send you spiraling start to feel like just another moment in life. Not because you've become cold or numb, but because you've become whole. And wholeness is the only true protection. Wholeness is what makes you genuinely untouchable. But here's what you need to understand. This work never ends. You don't arrive at a destination where you're suddenly done and nothing ever bothers you again. That's a fantasy. That's the myth that keeps people stuck. The truth is, as long as you're alive, as long as you're growing, as long as you're engaging with life, you will continue to discover new parts of yourself that need integration, new wounds that need healing, new patterns that need addressing. And that's not a bug, it's a feature. That's not a failure, it's the process. The goal is not to reach some perfect state where nothing ever affects you. The goal is to develop the capacity to work with whatever arises, to integrate whatever emerges, to remain grounded in your wholeness even as life continues to challenge you. This is what emotional mastery really means. It's not invulnerability. It's flexibility. It's resilience. It's the ability to be deeply affected by life while remaining unshaken in your core. Think of a tree in a storm. The branches bend, the leaves shake. The tree is clearly affected by the wind. but the roots hold firm. The trunk remains strong. The tree doesn't snap because it knows how to move with the storm rather than fight against it. That's what you're learning to become. Not rigid and inflexible, trying to stand unmoved against every wind, but rooted and whole, able to bend without breaking, able to be affected without being destroyed. And this brings us to something crucial, the role of pain in transformation. You've been taught to avoid pain at all costs, to see it as the enemy, to believe that the goal of life is to minimize suffering and maximize pleasure. And on some level, that makes sense. Nobody wants to suffer. But here's what that belief has cost you. It's made you afraid of the very experiences that could transform you. It's made you run from the feelings that could heal you. It's made you avoid the discomfort that could set you free. Because pain is not the enemy. Pain is information. Pain is your psyche's way of telling you that something needs attention. Something needs to be addressed. Something needs to change. When you have physical pain, you don't ignore it. You don't shame yourself for feeling it. You investigate. You ask, what is this telling me? Where is this coming from? What needs to heal? But with emotional pain, you do the opposite. You try to suppress it, numb it, distract from it. You tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way. You judge yourself for being affected. You try to make it go away as quickly as possible. And in doing so, you miss the message. You miss the opportunity for growth. You miss the chance for real healing. The truth is, every moment of emotional pain you've ever experienced has been an invitation to look deeper, to understand yourself better, to heal something that's been broken, to integrate something that's been rejected. But most people don't accept the invitation. They run, they distract, they numb, and then they wonder why they keep experiencing the same pain over and over again. It's because they never actually dealt with it. They just postponed it. And postponed pain doesn't disappear. It accumulates, it compounds, it grows, until one day something small happens and you have a reaction that's completely disproportionate. And you wonder, why am I falling apart over something so minor? It's because it's not just this minor thing. It's this minor thing plus 20 years of accumulated, unprocessed pain, all being triggered at once. This is what happens when you try to avoid pain rather than work with it. You don't actually avoid anything. You just delay the inevitable while making it worse. The alternative is to change your relationship with pain, to stop seeing it as the enemy and start seeing it as a teacher, to stop running from it and start investigating it, to ask, what is this pain trying to show me? What does it want me to understand? What needs to heal? And when you do this, when you really sit with your pain and listen to what it's telling you, something remarkable happens. It starts to transform, not disappear, but transform. It becomes less overwhelming, less consuming, less controlling, because pain that's acknowledged and processed becomes wisdom. Pain that's integrated becomes strength. Pain that's accepted becomes peace. But pain that's avoided, denied, and suppressed, that just becomes more pain. This is why the path to becoming truly untouchable requires you to touch everything, to feel everything, to experience everything fully. Not to wallow in it, not to be consumed by it, but to allow it, to process it, to integrate it. And yes, this is hard. Yes, this is uncomfortable. Yes, there will be moments when you want to quit, when you want to go back to numbing and avoiding and pretending. But here's what you need to remember. That path leads nowhere. You've already tried it. You've already spent years building walls and wearing masks and trying to protect yourself. And where has it gotten you? Here, to this moment, still hurting, still vulnerable, still controlled by your emotions. The only way out is through. The only way to truly heal is to stop running and start feeling. The only way to become genuinely untouchable is to allow yourself to be touched deeply and fully by everything life brings you, and to trust that you have the capacity to handle it, to process it, to integrate it, to grow from it, because you do. You absolutely do. Every human has this capacity. The question is whether you're willing to develop it, whether you're willing to do the work, whether you're willing to face what you've been avoiding. And I want to tell you something important. You don't have to do this alone. One of the biggest lies we've been sold is that emotional strength means handling everything by yourself, that asking for help is weakness, that needing support means you're failing. But that's nonsense. Real strength is knowing when you need help and being willing to ask for it. Real courage is admitting you can't do it all alone. Real wisdom is understanding that growth happens in community, not in isolation. You need people who understand this work, who are on this same journey, who can hold space for your process without judgment, who can remind you of the truth when you're lost in the pain. You need guides who have walked this path before you, who know the terrain, who can point out the pitfalls and show you the shortcuts, who can offer perspective when you're too close to see clearly. This is not a solo journey. It never was. Humans are social creatures. We heal in relationship. We grow in connection. We transform in community. So if you're trying to do this alone, if you're trying to figure it all out by yourself, if you're isolating because you think that's what strength looks like, please hear this. You're making it harder than it needs to be. Find your people. Find your community. Find support. Not people who will tell you what you want to hear, but people who will tell you what you need to hear. Not people who will enable your avoidance, but people who will lovingly hold you accountable to your growth. This is part of the work, too. Learning to be vulnerable enough to ask for help. Learning to be humble enough to admit you don't have all the answers. Learning to be open enough to receive support. And here's what's beautiful about this. When you start to do this work, when you start to integrate and heal and become whole, you naturally become the kind of person who can help others do the same. You become a lighthouse for people who are still lost in the storm. Not because you're perfect or have it all figured out, but because you've done the work, because you've faced your darkness and come out the other side, because you know the path and can help others find their way. This is the ripple effect of healing. When you heal yourself, you don't just change your own life. You change the lives of everyone around you, your family, your friends, your community, even strangers you haven't met yet. Because healed people heal people. Whole people help others become whole. Conscious people raise the consciousness of everyone they encounter. This is bigger than just your personal journey. This is about the evolution of human consciousness itself. Every person who does this work, who faces their shadows, who integrates their rejected parts, who becomes whole, contributes to the healing of the collective. And right now, the world desperately needs this. Look around. The division, the conflict, the unconsciousness. It's everywhere, and it's all stemming from the same root. Billions of people who are fragmented, wounded, at war with themselves and projecting that war onto everyone else. But it doesn't have to be this way. Change is possible. Evolution is possible. Healing is possible. But it starts with individuals. It starts with people like you who are willing to do the uncomfortable work of looking inward, facing what's there, and choosing integration over fragmentation. This is your invitation. Not to become perfect, not to transcend your humanity, not to rise above your emotions, but to become whole, to integrate all parts of yourself, to make peace with who you are, and in doing so, to become genuinely, authentically, powerfully untouchable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you have the capacity to work with whatever arises. Not because you don't feel pain, but because you're no longer afraid of it. Not because you're invulnerable, but because you're integrated. This is the path. It's not easy, it's not quick, it's not comfortable, but it's worth it. Because on the other side of this work is a kind of freedom that most people never experience. A kind of peace that isn't dependent on external circumstances. A kind of strength that doesn't require you to be anything other than exactly who you are. Let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice. Because theory is great, but application is everything. You're going to encounter situations that trigger you. That's guaranteed. Someone is going to say something that hurts. Someone is going to do something that disappoints. Something is going to happen that activates your old wounds. The difference is in how you respond. The old you would have reacted immediately, would have felt that surge of emotion and either exploded outward or imploded inward, would have been hijacked by the feeling, controlled by it, consumed by it. The new you, the integrated you, has a different process. First, you pause. You create space between the trigger and your response. This might only be a few seconds, but it's crucial. In that pause, you're interrupting the automatic pattern. You're choosing awareness over reaction. Second, you observe. You notice what's happening in your body, the tightness in your chest, the heat in your face, the tension in your shoulders. You don't try to change it, you just notice it. Third, you name it. This is anger. This is fear. This is fear. This is shame. You don't judge it. You don't try to make it mean something about you. You just identify what's present. Fourth, you investigate. Where is this coming from? What wound is this touching? What part of me needs attention right now? You get curious instead of reactive. And finally, you choose. Based on all this information, based on this awareness, you consciously choose how you want to respond. Maybe you need to set a boundary. Maybe you need to communicate something. Maybe you need to just breathe and let it pass. But the key is that you're choosing. You're not being controlled. You're not being hijacked. You're working with your emotions rather than being worked by them. This is the practice, over and over again, in small moments, in big crises, in relationships, and in solitude, with people who matter and people who don't. And here's what happens over time. This process that initially took conscious effort starts to become automatic. The pause becomes natural. The observation becomes instant. The investigation becomes effortless. The choice becomes clear. You develop what we might call emotional intelligence, but it's more than that. It's emotional mastery. It's the ability to be with whatever arises without being consumed by it, to feel deeply without being controlled by your feelings, to be affected without being destroyed. And people will notice. They'll comment on how calm you are, how centered you seem, how nothing seems to shake you. And you'll smile because you know the truth. You're not unshakable because nothing affects you. You're unshakable because you know how to work with whatever affects you. This is power, real power, not the power to control others or control circumstances, but the power to remain grounded in yourself regardless of what's happening around you. And it's available to you right now, not someday in the future when you've healed all your wounds or fixed all your problems. Now, in this moment, with whatever you're carrying, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're facing, the work begins now. The transformation starts now. The journey to becoming untouchable begins with this single moment of choosing awareness over reaction. So here's my question for you. Are you ready? Are you ready to stop running from yourself? Are you ready to face what you've been avoiding? Are you ready to integrate what you've rejected? Are you ready to become whole? Because if you are, everything changes from this moment forward. You'll still face challenges. You'll still experience pain. You'll still encounter triggers. But you'll face them differently. You'll experience them consciously. You'll work with them skillfully. And over time, you'll notice something remarkable. The things that used to destroy you barely affect you anymore. The people who used to have power over you lose that power. The situations that used to send you spiraling become just another moment in life. Not because you've become cold or numb, but because you've become integrated, whole, complete. And from that place of wholeness, you can finally live the life you were meant to live. Not performing, not pretending, not protecting, just being, fully, authentically, powerfully. This is what's possible. This is what's waiting for you. This is what becoming truly untouchable really means. And it starts with a choice. Your choice, right now. Choose awareness. Choose integration. Choose wholeness. Choose yourself. The journey begins here. And Midnight Audiobooks will be with you every step of the way. Welcome to your transformation. Now, let me tell you something that might surprise you. The reason you're still struggling, the reason you're still so easily hurt, the reason you still feel controlled by your emotions has nothing to do with what happened to you in the past. Yes, those events were real. Yes, they shaped you. But they're not what's keeping you stuck. What's keeping you stuck is your refusal to grieve. Stay with me here because this is important. You've been taught that grieving is something you do when someone dies. But that's not the whole truth. Grieving is what you do whenever you lose something. And I'm not just talking about people. You need to grieve the childhood you didn't have, the parents you deserved but didn't get, the love you gave that wasn't returned, the trust that was broken, the dreams that died, the versions of yourself that you had to kill to survive. All of those losses are still inside you, unprocessed, unacknowledged, taking up space. And until you grieve them properly, they will continue to control you from the shadows. Most people try to skip this step. They want to move forward, be positive, focus on the future. But you can't build a new life on top of unprocessed grief. It's like trying to build a house on quicksand. Eventually, everything sinks. Real grief is messy. It's not linear. It doesn't follow the neat 5-stage model you learned about. It comes in waves. Some days you'll feel fine, and then suddenly you're drowning in sadness for no apparent reason. That's normal. That's the process. And here's what you need to understand. Feeling the grief doesn't make it worse. Avoiding the grief makes it worse. When you finally allow yourself to feel it fully, to cry, to rage, to mourn what you lost, that's when the healing actually begins. But our culture doesn't teach us how to grieve properly. We're taught to be strong, to move on quickly, to not dwell on the past. And so we carry around this accumulated, unprocessed grief that weighs us down and makes us vulnerable to every little trigger. The person who cuts you off in traffic shouldn't make you that angry. But it does, because it's not really about the traffic. It's about all the times you felt disrespected, dismissed, invisible. All that ungrieved pain comes rushing to the surface, and suddenly you're having a complete meltdown over something minor. This is what unprocessed grief does. It hijacks your present moment with pain from the past. It makes you overreact to current situations because they're touching old wounds that never healed. So how do you process it? How do you finally grieve what needs to be grieved? First, you have to be willing to feel it. Not think about it. Not analyze it. Not understand it intellectually. Feel it in your body, where it lives. Sit with the sadness. Let the tears come. Don't distract yourself. Don't numb yourself. Don't tell yourself you're being silly or dramatic. Just feel it. Sit with the anger. Not the explosive, destructive anger that lashes out at others, but the deep, ancient anger at how you were treated, at what was taken from you, at the injustice of it all. Feel that. Let it move through you. Sit with the emptiness, the hollow ache of loss, the void where something or someone used to be. Don't try to fill it immediately with something new. Just acknowledge it. Honor it. This is the work of grieving. And it takes time. You can't rush it. You can't force it. You can't do it on a schedule. It unfolds in its own time, at its own pace. But here's what happens when you do this work. Those old wounds finally start to heal. Not disappear, but heal. They become scars instead of open wounds. And scars don't hurt anymore. They're just part of your story, part of what made you who you are. And when those wounds heal, when you finally process that accumulated grief, you become so much less reactive. Things that would have destroyed you before barely register now. Not because you don't care, but because there's no longer an open wound for them to press on. This is part of becoming untouchable. Grieving what needs to be grieved so that your past doesn't keep hijacking your present. Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something that's probably sabotaging you more than you realize. Your relationship with vulnerability. You've been taught that vulnerability is weakness, that showing emotion is unprofessional, that asking for help is failure, that admitting you're struggling is shameful. And so you've spent your life trying to appear strong, competent, together, in control. You've worked so hard to make sure no one sees the mess underneath. No one sees the fear, the doubt, the confusion, the pain. But here's the thing about that strategy. It's exhausting. And it doesn't actually protect you. It isolates you. Because when you refuse to be vulnerable, when you refuse to show people who you really are, you prevent real connection. People can only connect with what they can see. If all they see is your mask, they're connecting with the mask, not with you. And then you feel alone, even when you're surrounded by people, because no one actually knows you. No one sees the real you. And some part of you starts to believe that if they did see the real you, they wouldn't want you anyway. This is the trap of invulnerability. It promises to protect you, but it actually ensures that you'll never experience real intimacy, real connection, real belonging. Now, I'm not saying you should be vulnerable with everyone. That would be foolish. Not everyone has earned the right to see your vulnerability. Not everyone is safe. Not everyone will handle it with care. But you need some people, a small circle of trusted individuals who you can be real with, who you can take off the mask around, who you can show your mess to without fear of judgment. Because humans are wired for connection. We're not meant to do life alone, and we certainly can't heal alone. We need witnesses to our pain. We need people who can hold space for our process without trying to fix us or make us feel better too quickly. This is where real healing happens. In the presence of someone who sees you, really sees you, in all your messy humanity, and doesn't turn away, who stays, who accepts, who loves you, not despite your brokenness, but including it. But to experience this, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to show the parts of yourself that you're most ashamed of. The parts that you're most afraid will make people reject you. And yes, some people will reject you. That's the risk. But the people who stay, the people who see you and choose to remain, those are your people. Those are the relationships worth having. The others, the ones who can only handle your mask, who need you to be strong and together all the time, who can't handle your humanity. They're not actually connected to you anyway. They're connected to your performance. And that's not real relationship. So here's the challenge. Start practicing vulnerability with people who have earned your trust. Start sharing what's really going on. Start asking for help when you need it. Start admitting when you don't have it all figured out. It will feel terrifying at first. Your nervous system will scream that you're in danger, that you're exposing yourself, that this is a mistake. But push through that fear, because on the other side of it is connection. Real, deep, authentic connection. And that connection, that sense of being seen and accepted as you really are, is healing in a way that nothing else can be. This is another piece of becoming untouchable. Not by hiding your vulnerability, but by being strategically vulnerable with safe people, which actually makes you stronger, not weaker. Now let's talk about something that's probably causing you more pain than any external circumstance, your inner critic. You know that voice, the one that tells you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough, the one that compares you to everyone else and always finds you lacking, the one that replays your mistakes on an endless loop, that catastrophizes every small problem, that interprets every neutral event as evidence of your inadequacy. Most people think this voice is just part of having low self-esteem, that if they could just become more confident, build more self-love, think more positively, that voice would go away. But that's not how it works. Because that inner critic isn't actually your enemy. It's trying to protect you. I know that sounds crazy. How could something that's constantly tearing you down be trying to protect you? But think about it. When did that voice first develop? Probably when you were young, when you made a mistake and got punished for it, when you showed a part of yourself and got rejected for it, when you tried something and failed and felt the pain of that failure. That inner critic developed as a way to protect you from future pain. It figured, if I criticize you first, if I point out all your flaws, if I prepare you for the worst, then when other people criticize you or reject you or hurt you, it won't be as painful. You'll be prepared. It's like a vaccine. A little bit of self-inflicted pain to prevent a lot of externally inflicted pain. The problem is, this strategy doesn't actually work. It doesn't make external criticism hurt less. It just ensures that you're experiencing constant internal criticism even when there's no external threat. You end up hurting yourself preemptively, trying to avoid potential future pain, but all you're doing is guaranteeing present pain. So how do you work with this inner critic? Not by trying to silence it, not by arguing with it, not by pretending it's not there, but by understanding it, by recognizing it as a misguided protector. When that voice starts up, instead of believing it or fighting it, you can acknowledge it. Thank you for trying to protect me. I know you're scared, but I don't need this kind of protection anymore. I can handle whatever happens. You can rest now. This is called parts work, and it's incredibly powerful. When you stop treating your inner critic as an enemy and start treating it as a wounded part of you, that's trying to help in the only way it knows how, everything changes. You can develop compassion for that part. You can thank it for its service, and you can gently let it know that its services are no longer required. Over time, with practice, that inner critic gets quieter, not because you've destroyed it, but because you've helped it relax. You've shown it that you're capable of handling life without its constant vigilance. And as that voice gets quieter, something amazing happens. You start to actually enjoy your life. You stop second-guessing every decision. You stop replaying every conversation looking for mistakes. You stop comparing yourself to everyone else. You just live, present, engaged, free. This is another crucial piece of becoming untouchable. Healing your relationship with your inner critic so that you're no longer at war with yourself. Here's something else that might be keeping you stuck. Your addiction to certainty. You want to know how things will turn out. You want to know that you're making the right decision. You want to know that you won't get hurt. You want guarantees, and so you hesitate, you overthink. You analysis paralysis yourself into inaction. Because taking action means accepting uncertainty, and uncertainty feels dangerous. But here's the truth. Certainty is an illusion. You will never have all the information. You will never be able to predict the future. You will never eliminate all risk. And your attempts to achieve certainty are actually making you more vulnerable, not less. Because while you're busy trying to figure everything out, life is passing you by. Opportunities are coming and going. Time is ticking. The most emotionally resilient people aren't the ones who have achieved certainty. They're the ones who have made peace with uncertainty, who have developed the capacity to take action without knowing how things will turn out. They understand that life is inherently uncertain, that the future is unknowable, that risk is unavoidable, and they've stopped fighting against that reality. Instead, they've developed faith. Not religious faith necessarily, though it could include that, but faith in themselves. Faith in their ability to handle whatever happens. Faith that even if things don't work out the way they hoped, they'll be okay. This is what confidence actually is. Not the belief that you won't fail, but the belief that even if you do fail, you'll survive. You'll learn, you'll adapt. You'll be okay. When you have that kind of faith in yourself, uncertainty stops being so terrifying. You can take risks. You can make moves. You can try things. Because you know that whatever happens, you have the capacity to deal with it. This is freedom. Real freedom. Not the freedom from consequences, but the freedom to act despite uncertainty. To live fully even though you don't know how things will end. And how do you develop this faith? By proving to yourself over and over again that you can handle things. By taking small risks and surviving. By facing small challenges and overcoming them. By building evidence that you're more capable than you think. Every time you do something that scares you and survive, you build a little more faith. Every time you fail and recover, you build a little more confidence. Every time you face uncertainty and keep moving forward anyway, you become a little more untouchable. Because you stop needing external guarantees. You stop needing to know how things will turn out. You trust yourself to handle whatever comes. This is power. This is what makes you genuinely unshakable. Not the absence of fear or uncertainty, but the ability to move forward despite them. Let me tell you about something that's probably destroying your peace more than anything else. Your attachment to outcomes. You want things to go a certain way. You have expectations about how people should treat you, how situations should unfold, how your life should look. And when reality doesn't match those expectations, you suffer. The job you wanted goes to someone else. The relationship ends. The opportunity falls through. The plan doesn't work out. And you're devastated. Not because of what actually happened, but because it wasn't what you wanted to happen. This is attachment. And it's one of the primary sources of human suffering. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have goals or preferences. Of course you should. Having things you're working toward gives life meaning and direction. But there's a difference between having a preference and being attached to an outcome. Preference says, I would like this to happen, and I'll work toward it. Attachment says, this must happen, or I won't be okay. Preference is flexible. Attachment is rigid. Preference allows for multiple possible good outcomes. Attachment insists on one specific outcome. And when you're attached, when you've decided that your happiness depends on one specific thing happening, you've made yourself incredibly vulnerable. Because you've given all your power to circumstances outside your control. The alternative is not to stop caring. It's not to become passive or apathetic. It's to hold your preferences lightly, to work toward what you want while remaining open to other possibilities. It's to say, I want this, and I'll do everything in my power to make it happen. But if it doesn't happen, I'll be okay. I'll find another path. I'll adapt. I'll discover new possibilities I can't even see right now. This is what non-attachment looks like, and it's incredibly liberating. When you're not attached to specific outcomes, you stop being devastated when things don't go your way. You stop taking it as evidence that you're a failure or that life is against you. You just see it as information. This path didn't work out. Time to try a different path. You become more experimental, more willing to try things, more open to feedback, because you're not so invested in being right or having it work out exactly as you planned. And paradoxically, this actually makes you more likely to succeed, because you're not paralyzed by the fear of failure. You're not so attached to one specific vision that you miss other opportunities. You're flexible, adaptive, resilient. This is another key to becoming untouchable, loosening your grip on outcomes, trusting that you'll be okay regardless of what happens, knowing that there are multiple paths to fulfillment, not just the one you've fixated on. Let's talk about forgiveness, because it's probably not what you think it is. You've been told you need to forgive people who hurt you. That forgiveness is necessary for healing. That holding on to anger and resentment only hurts you. And on some level, that's true. But the way forgiveness is usually taught is problematic. It implies that forgiveness means letting people off the hook, excusing their behavior, pretending it didn't matter, welcoming them back into your life. No wonder you're resistant to it. Who wants to do that? But real forgiveness isn't any of those things. Real forgiveness is releasing your own attachment to the pain. It's choosing to stop giving that person or that event power over your present moment. You can forgive someone and still have boundaries. You can forgive someone and still acknowledge that what they did was wrong. You can forgive someone and never speak to them again. Because forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. It's the decision to stop carrying their actions around like a weight. It's the choice to free yourself from the prison of resentment. And here's what's important to understand. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. It's a practice. You don't just decide to forgive someone once, and then it's done. You have to keep choosing it over and over, especially when your mind wants to replay the hurt. Someone wrongs you. The anger is fresh. The pain is real, and you're not ready to forgive yet. That's okay. Feel the anger. Honor the pain. Set your boundaries. Protect yourself. But at some point, if you want to heal, you have to start the process of release. Not for their sake, but for yours. Because holding on to that resentment is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. You're the one suffering. You're the one consumed by it. You're the one giving them power over your emotional state, maybe years after the event, maybe when they're not even thinking about you anymore. Forgiveness is taking that power back. It's saying what you did was wrong and it hurt me, but I'm choosing to release my attachment to that pain. I'm choosing to free myself from this prison. I'm choosing me. And when you do this, when you really commit to the practice of forgiveness, you become untouchable in a whole new way, because you're no longer giving past hurts power over your present moment. Someone can do something similar in the present, and instead of it triggering all that old rage, you just deal with the present situation. You set your boundary. You communicate your need. You walk away if necessary. But you're not hijacked by accumulated resentment. This is freedom. This is healing. This is what it means to truly let go. Now I want to address something that might be controversial. The idea that you need to love yourself before anyone else can love you. This is partial truth presented as absolute truth, and it's causing a lot of confusion and unnecessary pain. Yes, your relationship with yourself affects your relationships with others. Yes, if you fundamentally believe you're worthless, You'll probably attract people who treat you as worthless. But this idea that you need to completely heal yourself, fully love yourself, totally accept yourself before you can have healthy relationships, that's not how it works. And it keeps people trapped in isolation, thinking they're not ready yet, not good enough yet, need to work on themselves more before they deserve connection. The truth is, we heal in relationship. We learn to love ourselves partly through being loved by others. We discover our worth partly through being valued by people we respect. It's not either or, it's both and. You work on yourself and you connect with others. You build self-love and you allow others to love you. You heal alone and you heal in community. In fact, isolating yourself until you're fixed is often just another avoidance strategy, another way of protecting yourself from the vulnerability of real connection. Yes, you need to do your inner work. Yes, you need to take responsibility for your healing, but you don't need to do it alone, and you don't need to be perfect before you're worthy of love and connection. You're worthy now, exactly as you are, in all your messy, broken, beautiful humanity, and the right people will see that. The right people will value you not despite your struggles, but including them. So stop waiting. Stop thinking you need to be more healed, more whole, more together before you deserve good relationships. You deserve them now. And the process of being in healthy relationships will actually accelerate your healing, not slow it down. This is part of becoming untouchable, too. Recognizing that you don't need to be invulnerable to be worthy of love. That your value isn't determined by how put together you are. That you're enough right now, just as you are. Let me tell you something about the stories you tell yourself. Your life is not just what happens to you. Your life is the story you tell about what happens to you. And that story has immense power. Two people can go through the same experience and come out with completely different stories. One person's story might be, "This happened to me, and it proved that I'm weak and the world is dangerous." Another person's story might be, "This happened to me, and it showed me how strong I am and how I can overcome anything." Same event, completely different meanings, completely different effects on their lives going forward. This is why narrative is so important. The stories you tell about your past shape your present and determine your future. If your story is one of victimhood, where things happen to you and you have no power, where the world is against you and you're helpless, that's the reality you'll continue to create. But if your story is one of growth, where challenges are opportunities, where pain is a teacher, where you're constantly evolving and becoming stronger, that becomes your reality instead. And here's the thing. You get to choose your story. You get to decide what meaning to assign to your experiences. You get to determine what narrative you're living in. This doesn't mean denying what happened or pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. It means choosing how you frame it. Choosing what you make it mean about you and your life. That trauma you experienced, it's a fact. It happened. But what does it mean? Does it mean you're broken forever? Or does it mean you're a survivor? Does it mean the world is cruel? Or does it mean you're strong enough to handle cruelty? You decide. And that decision shapes everything. So take a look at the stories you're telling. Are they empowering you or imprisoning you? Are they opening possibilities or closing them off? Are they helping you grow or keeping you stuck? And if the stories you're telling aren't serving you, change them. not by lying about what happened, but by choosing a different frame, a different meaning, a different narrative. This is not toxic positivity. This is not pretending bad things are actually good. This is taking responsibility for the meaning you make, for the story you tell, for the identity you construct. And when you do this consciously, when you become the author of your own story rather than just a character being acted upon, you become untouchable in yet another way, because no one can give you a story you don't accept. No one can make you believe something about yourself that you've decided isn't true. No one can write your narrative without your permission. You're the author. You're in control of the story. And that's powerful. Let's talk about rest, because it's probably something you're terrible at. You've been taught that rest is laziness, that productivity is virtue, that busyness is a badge of honor, that if you're not constantly doing something, you're wasting your life, and so you run yourself into the ground. You ignore your body's signals. You push through exhaustion. You treat rest as something you'll do when everything else is done, which means you never actually rest, because everything is never done. And then you wonder why you're so emotionally reactive, why small things set you off, why you can't handle stress like you used to. It's because you're depleted. You're running on empty. Your nervous system is fried. Your resources are exhausted. You can't do the work of integration and healing when you're in survival mode. You can't process emotions when you're just trying to get through the day. You can't build resilience when you're already at your limit. Rest is not optional. It's not a luxury. It's not something you do when you've earned it. It's a biological necessity. And if you're not getting it, everything else becomes harder. This includes mental rest, emotional rest, time when you're not processing anything, not working on yourself, not trying to be better, just being. Because growth doesn't actually happen during the work. It happens during the rest. The work breaks things down, creates the stimulus for change. But the actual integration, the actual growth, happens when you rest. Think of it like working out. You don't build muscle during the workout. You build it during the recovery. The workout creates the stimulus, but the growth happens when you rest. Same with emotional work. The insights come during the active work, but the integration happens during the rest. So if you're constantly working on yourself, constantly processing, constantly trying to heal, you might actually be slowing your progress. You need to balance the work with rest, the effort with ease, the doing with being. And rest doesn't mean you're not productive. Rest is productive. It's how your system consolidates learning, processes information, repairs damage, and prepares for what's next. So give yourself permission to rest, without guilt, without shame, without feeling like you're falling behind. Rest is part of the work. Rest is how you become strong enough to do the work. Rest is what makes you resilient enough to handle whatever life brings. This is another piece of becoming untouchable. Recognizing that you can't be strong all the time, that you need periods of rest and recovery, that taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's necessary. Final section coming. We're building toward a powerful conclusion that brings all these threads together and gives practical next steps. Stay with me for the transformative finish. Now we need to talk about something that affects everything we've discussed. Your relationship with time. You're either living in the past or living in the future, And either way, you're missing the only moment where life actually happens. Now, when you're in the past, you're ruminating, replaying conversations, regretting decisions, wishing things had been different. You're taking energy from your present moment and pouring it into a past that no longer exists and can't be changed. When you're in the future, you're worrying, catastrophizing, trying to control outcomes, preparing for threats. You're taking energy from your present moment and pouring it into a future that doesn't exist yet and may never exist. And in both cases, you're not actually here. You're not present in your own life. You're ghosting through your days, your mind somewhere else, your attention divided. This is why practices like mindfulness and meditation have become so popular. Not because they're trendy, but because they address a fundamental problem. Most people are never fully present in their own lives. And when you're not present, you miss everything. You miss the beauty around you. You miss the connections available to you. You miss the opportunities in front of you. You miss your actual life while you're busy thinking about your life. But more than that, when you're not present, you can't access your power. You can't make good decisions when you're not fully here. You can't respond skillfully when you're distracted by past or future. All your power exists in the present moment. That's the only place where you can actually take action. The only place where you can make choices. The only place where life is happening. So how do you become more present? It starts with noticing when you're not. Catching yourself when your mind has wandered to the past or future. Not judging it, just noticing it. And then gently bringing your attention back to now. What are you seeing right now? What are you hearing? What sensations are you feeling in your body? What's the temperature of the air? What's the quality of the light? These simple observations bring you back to the present. They anchor you in reality rather than in the stories your mind is telling. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. The more you catch yourself lost in thought and bring yourself back, over and over, 1,000 times a day if necessary. Because the present moment is where peace lives. Not in having resolved your past or secured your future, but in being fully here with what is right now. This is another dimension of becoming untouchable. When you're fully present, past regrets can't touch you because you're not giving them attention. Future worries can't touch you because you're not feeding them energy. You're just here dealing with what's actually in front of you. And what's actually in front of you is almost always manageable. It's the accumulated weight of past and future that becomes overwhelming. But in this moment right now, you're okay. You're breathing. You're alive. You're here. And that's enough. Let me tell you about the power of acceptance. Not the passive resignation kind of acceptance. Not giving up or settling, but the active, conscious choice to accept reality as it is in this moment. You've spent so much energy fighting against what is, wishing things were different, demanding that reality conform to your preferences, resisting what's happening because it's not what you want. And all that resistance creates suffering. Not the pain itself, but your resistance to the pain. Not the situation itself, but your refusal to accept that this is the situation. When you stop resisting, when you accept what is, something remarkable happens. You free up an enormous amount of energy. Energy that was being wasted in the futile battle against reality. And once that energy is freed up, you can actually use it to change things, to adapt, to problem solve, to create new possibilities. Acceptance is not the end of growth. It's the beginning, because you can't change what you don't accept. You can't work with what you're refusing to see. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to navigate a ship, but you refuse to accept where you actually are. You keep insisting you're somewhere else, somewhere you want to be rather than where you are. How can you chart a course to where you want to go if you won't acknowledge where you're starting from? You can't. You're lost, but refusing to admit it, and so you can never find your way. But when you accept where you are, even if it's not where you want to be, now you can work with reality. Now you can make a plan. Now you can take action that's actually relevant to your situation. This is the power of acceptance. It doesn't mean you like where you are. It doesn't mean you're not going to work to change it. It just means you're acknowledging what is, so you can work with it effectively. And when you practice this kind of acceptance, you become untouchable in a new way, because you're no longer exhausting yourself fighting against reality. You're flowing with it, working with it, using it. You accept that you have these emotions. You accept that this situation happened. You accept that this is where you are. And from that acceptance, you can choose your response. Not reaction, but response. Conscious, deliberate, powerful response. This is mastery. This is what it means to work with life rather than against it. Now, let's address something that's probably causing you more pain than you realize. Comparison. You compare yourself to others constantly. Their success makes you feel like a failure. Their happiness makes you feel inadequate. Their progress makes you feel like you're falling behind. Social media has made this worse, of course. You're seeing everyone's highlight reel and comparing it to your behind the scenes. You're seeing their wins and comparing them to your struggles. But even before social media, comparison was a primary source of suffering. Because when you measure your worth by comparing yourself to others, you've set up a game you can never win. There will always be someone more successful, more attractive, more talented, more popular, more whatever, always. And if your self-worth depends on being better than others, you'll spend your entire life feeling inadequate. The alternative is not to tell yourself you're the best. That's just another form of comparison. The alternative is to stop comparing altogether. Your journey is your journey. Your pace is your pace. Your path is your path. Comparing it to anyone else's makes no sense because you're not living their life. You don't have their circumstances, their history, their advantages, their challenges. You only have your own life. And the only meaningful comparison is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. Are you growing? Are you learning? Are you becoming more of who you want to be? That's all that matters. Not whether you're ahead of or behind anyone else, but whether you're moving forward on your own path. When you stop comparing, you free yourself from so much unnecessary suffering. You can celebrate others' success without feeling diminished by it. You can acknowledge your struggles without feeling ashamed of them. You can focus on your own growth without constant distraction. This is another key to becoming untouchable. When you're not measuring yourself against others, their achievements don't threaten you. Their progress doesn't make you feel inadequate. You're on your own path, focused on your own journey, and that's incredibly liberating. Let's talk about boundaries because most people have no idea how to set them properly. You've probably been taught that boundaries are mean, that saying no is selfish, that putting yourself first makes you a bad person, and so you say yes when you want to say no. You tolerate behavior that hurts you. You give more than you have to give. And then you resent people for taking advantage of you, even though you never set a boundary, even though you never communicated what was and wasn't okay with you. Boundaries are not mean. Boundaries are how you take care of yourself. They're how you communicate your needs and limits. They're how you protect your energy and your peace. And here's what's important to understand. Boundaries are not about controlling other people. They're about controlling yourself. They're not about what others can and can't do. They're about what you will and won't accept. You can't make someone treat you with respect, but you can decide that you won't engage with people who don't. You can't make someone be reliable, but you can decide that you won't depend on people who aren't. See the difference? One is trying to control them. The other is taking responsibility for yourself. Good boundaries are clear, direct, and unapologetic. I'm not available after 9 p.m. I don't discuss that topic. I need advance notice for plans. Not mean, not aggressive, just clear. And when people violate those boundaries, you have consequences. Not punishment, but natural consequences. I told you I'm not available after 9 p.m., so I'm not going to respond to this message until tomorrow. I said I don't discuss that topic, so I'm going to excuse myself from this conversation. You don't need to be angry. You don't need to make them wrong. You just hold your boundary, calmly, firmly, consistently. And here's what happens. People either respect your boundaries or they show themselves out. And either outcome is fine. Either you get relationships where your needs are respected, or you get freedom from relationships that weren't serving you anyway. This is how you become untouchable. By being so clear about your boundaries that people either treat you well or they can't access you. There's no middle ground where you're being mistreated but staying anyway. You know your worth. You know your limits. You communicate them clearly. And you hold them consistently. That's power. That's self-respect. That's how you take care of yourself. Let me talk to you about purpose for a moment, because the way it's usually taught is causing a lot of unnecessary anxiety. You've been told you need to find your purpose, your one true calling, the thing you were put on earth to do. And if you haven't found it yet, you're wasting your life. This creates enormous pressure. And for most people, it leads to paralysis, because they don't know what their purpose is, so they don't do anything. They wait. They search. They analyze, but they don't act. Here's a different perspective. Purpose is not something you find. It's something you create through your choices, through your actions, through what you give your attention and energy to. Your purpose might change throughout your life. What feels meaningful to you at 20 might not feel meaningful at 40, and that's okay. You're not failing. You're evolving. And purpose doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be changing the world or curing cancer or building empires. Your purpose might be to create a loving home, to be a good friend, to make people laugh, to help your community. Small purposes are not lesser purposes. They're just yours. And if they're meaningful to you, that's enough. The problem is when you're so busy looking for purpose that you're not actually living. When you're so focused on finding the perfect thing that you're not doing anything at all. Start doing things. Try things. Create things. Help people. Build things. See what resonates. See what feels meaningful. See what you want to keep doing. Purpose emerges through action, not through contemplation. You don't think your way into purpose. You live your way into it. And when you stop putting so much pressure on yourself to have this perfect, clear, unchanging purpose, you free yourself to actually live, to experiment, to grow, to discover. This is part of becoming untouchable, too. Not needing to have it all figured out. Not needing to know exactly where you're going. Just taking the next step. Doing the next thing. Showing up for today. The path reveals itself as you walk it. But you have to walk it first. Let's address something that might be uncomfortable. Your role in your own suffering. Not everything that happens to you is your fault. Some things are just bad luck or other people's choices or circumstances beyond your control. That's reality. But you do play a role in much of your suffering, through your choices, through your patterns, through what you tolerate and what you allow. And until you're willing to look at that honestly and without defensiveness, you'll stay stuck. Because you can't change what you won't acknowledge. This is not about blame. This is not about shame. This is about taking your power back. Because if everything is happening to you, if you're just a victim of circumstances, then you have no power to change anything. But if you acknowledge your role, if you see the patterns you're repeating, the choices you're making, the ways you're contributing to your own struggles, then you can change those things. You can make different choices. You can break those patterns. This is incredibly empowering. It's the difference between life is happening to me and there's nothing I can do, and I'm creating my experience through my choices, which means I can create something different. So look honestly at your life. What patterns keep repeating? What situations do you find yourself in over and over? What role are you playing in that? Maybe you keep choosing unavailable partners. Maybe you keep staying in situations long after they've become unhealthy. Maybe you keep avoiding necessary conversations. Maybe you keep sacrificing your needs for others. These are choices. Unconscious choices maybe, but choices nonetheless. And you can make different ones. This is not about beating yourself up. This is about waking up, becoming conscious of the ways you're contributing to your own problems so you can stop doing those things. And when you do this, when you really take responsibility for your part, you become untouchable in yet another way. Because you're no longer waiting for circumstances to change or people to be different. You're taking action. You're making changes. You're creating your life rather than just enduring it. This is agency. This is power. This is freedom. Now we're going to bring this all together because all these pieces we've been discussing are interconnected. Becoming untouchable is not about developing one skill or fixing one problem. It's about fundamentally changing your relationship with yourself and with life. It's about healing your wounds so they stop controlling you. It's about integrating your rejected parts so you can be whole. It's about grieving your losses so you can move forward. It's about developing compassion for yourself so you can stop the internal war. It's about becoming present so you can access your power. It's about accepting reality so you can work with it. It's about setting boundaries so you can protect yourself. It's about letting go of comparison so you can focus on your own path. It's about all of it, together, interconnected, each piece supporting the others. And here's what happens when you do this work, really commit to it. Consistently, over time, you notice that things that used to destroy you barely register anymore. The criticism that would have devastated you feels like just someone's opinion. The rejection that would have crushed you feels like just not the right fit. The setback that would have discouraged you feels like just a detour. Not because you don't care, but because you're not carrying all that accumulated pain anymore. You've processed it, you've healed it, you've integrated it. And so each new experience is just that, a new experience. Not weighted down with all the unprocessed pain from similar past experiences. Not triggering wounds that never healed. Just this moment, this situation, this challenge, and you handle it calmly, skillfully, consciously, not perfectly, because perfection isn't the goal, but effectively, with awareness, with choice. This is what it means to be untouchable. This is what emotional mastery looks like. This is the freedom that comes from doing the work. And I want to be clear, this is available to you, all of it, right now. Not someday when you're more ready or more healed or more deserving. Now, you have everything you need to begin this transformation. The willingness to look honestly at yourself. The courage to feel what you've been avoiding. The commitment to keep showing up even when it's hard. That's all it takes. Not perfection. Not having it all figured out. Just willingness, courage, and commitment. So what's your next step? Start where you are, with whatever is present for you right now. Whatever emotion, whatever pattern, whatever wound is calling for your attention. Start there. Don't try to do everything at once. Don't overwhelm yourself with the magnitude of the work. Just take one step. Address one thing. Make one change. Maybe it's setting one boundary. Maybe it's acknowledging one rejected part of yourself. Maybe it's processing one piece of ungrieved loss. Maybe it's catching yourself in one comparison and choosing differently. Just one thing today, and then another thing tomorrow, and another thing the next day. This is how transformation happens. Not through dramatic epiphanies or sudden changes, but through consistent daily practice. Through showing up for yourself over and over again. Through choosing awareness over avoidance, integration over fragmentation, growth over stagnation. One choice at a time, one moment at a time, one day at a time, and over time those choices add up. Those moments accumulate. Those days become weeks, months, years, and you look back and realize you're not the same person you were. You've transformed. You've grown. You've become untouchable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you've developed the capacity to work with whatever arises. Because you've healed the wounds that made you so vulnerable. Because you've integrated the parts that were fighting against each other. Because you've become whole. This is the promise. This is what's possible. This is what's waiting for you. So make the choice, right now, in this moment. Choose growth. Choose awareness. Choose yourself. And if you need support on this journey, that's what Midnight Audiobooks is here for. We'll keep bringing you content like this. We'll keep exploring these depths together. We'll keep supporting your transformation because you deserve to be free. You deserve to be whole. You deserve to live without being controlled by your wounds and your fears and your past. You deserve to be untouchable. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for choosing consciousness over unconsciousness, integration over fragmentation, freedom over suffering. The journey continues, and we'll be here with you every step of the way. Until next time, stay aware, stay committed, stay true to yourself. This is Midnight Audiobooks, and this is your transformation. Before we close, there's something else we need to address. Something fundamental that ties all of this together and often gets overlooked in discussions about emotional mastery, the role of the body. You've been treating your emotional work as something that happens only in your mind. You think about your trauma. You analyze your patterns. You try to understand your reactions, and all of that is important, but it's incomplete. Because your emotions don't just live in your mind. They live in your body. They're stored in your muscles, your organs, your nervous system. That trauma you experienced, it's not just a memory. It's tension in your shoulders. It's the knot in your stomach. It's the tightness in your chest. And you can't think your way out of that. You can't analyze your way through it. You have to feel it in your body and allow it to release. This is why practices like yoga, breath work, somatic therapy, and even just intentional movement are so powerful. They help you access and release emotions that are stored in your body, emotions that talk therapy alone can't always reach. When you're angry, that's not just a thought. It's heat in your body, tension in your jaw, clenching in your fists. And if you try to suppress that anger by thinking differently about the situation, that physical energy doesn't just disappear. It gets stored, compressed, buried, and it stays there creating chronic tension, inflammation, pain, illness. Your body keeping score of all the emotions you refused to feel. So part of becoming untouchable is reconnecting with your body, learning to feel sensation without immediately interpreting it or trying to change it, learning to allow energy to move through you rather than getting stuck. This might look like shaking when you're anxious, allowing your body to discharge that nervous energy, or dancing when you're angry, giving that heat somewhere to go, or crying when you're sad, not stopping the tears before they've fully released. Your body knows how to process emotions. It's designed for it, but you've been taught to override those natural processes, to be still when your body wants to move, to smile when your face wants to cry, to speak calmly when your voice wants to yell. And in overriding those natural processes, you've created blockages, stuck energy, unprocessed emotions living in your tissue. The good news is you can change this. You can start listening to your body, noticing what it's trying to tell you, allowing it to move in the ways it needs to move. This doesn't mean acting on every impulse. You don't literally punch someone when you're angry, but you might need to punch a pillow or go for a run or do some vigorous exercise, something that allows that physical energy to discharge. When you start working with your body this way, when you start allowing emotions to move through you physically, something remarkable happens. They don't get stuck anymore. They don't accumulate. They flow through and release. And you become more resilient, more flexible, less reactive, because you're not carrying around all that stored, compressed emotional energy anymore. This is a crucial piece of the puzzle that often gets missed. Mind work is important, but body work is essential. You need both. Your body is not separate from your emotions. It's where your emotions live. And if you want to truly master your emotions, you need to befriend your body. Now let's talk about something that might change your entire perspective on difficult emotions. They're not the problem. You've been taught to categorize emotions as good or bad. Happy, joyful, excited, peaceful. These are good emotions. You want more of these. Angry, sad, anxious, jealous, these are bad emotions. You want less of these. But this binary thinking is what's creating so much of your suffering. Because when you label an emotion as bad, you try to get rid of it. You suppress it, deny it, distract from it, and in doing so, you make it worse. Here's a different perspective. There are no bad emotions. There are only emotions that are comfortable or uncomfortable. And the uncomfortable ones, they're not your enemies, they're messengers. Anger is telling you that a boundary has been crossed, that something is unjust, that you need to protect yourself or stand up for what matters. Sadness is telling you that you've lost something that mattered to you, that you need to grieve, that you need time to process and heal. Anxiety is telling you that you care about something, that there is potential danger or challenge ahead, that you need to prepare or pay attention. Jealousy is telling you that you want something, that you value something that someone else has, that maybe you need to work toward that thing yourself. These emotions are information. They're guidance. They're your inner wisdom trying to communicate with you. And when you suppress them or judge them as bad, you miss the message. The goal is not to only have comfortable emotions. The goal is to be able to experience all emotions skillfully, to allow them, understand them, learn from them, and respond to them appropriately. When you stop fighting against your uncomfortable emotions and start working with them, everything changes. They stop being so overwhelming. They stop controlling you. They become just another form of information, another aspect of your experience. This is emotional maturity, not the absence of difficult emotions, but the capacity to be with them without being consumed by them. And here's what's beautiful. When you stop resisting your uncomfortable emotions, they actually become less uncomfortable. It's the resistance that creates most of the suffering, not the emotion itself. Think about it. When you feel sad and you allow yourself to cry, to really feel that sadness fully, it moves through you. It peaks and then it subsides. It doesn't last forever. But when you feel sad and you fight it, try to push it away, judge yourself for feeling it, that sadness gets stuck. It doesn't move. It doesn't release. It just sits there, creating ongoing suffering. The emotion itself is not the problem. Your resistance to the emotion is the problem. So practice allowing. When an uncomfortable emotion arises, instead of immediately trying to change it or get rid of it, just allow it to be there. Notice it. Name it. Feel where it lives in your body. Let it be exactly as it is, and see what happens. See if it's actually as unbearable as you thought. See if you can handle feeling it without falling apart. See if it moves through you more quickly when you stop resisting it. This is a radical practice, and it's transformative, because when you're no longer afraid of your own emotions, when you know you can handle whatever arises, you become untouchable in the truest sense, not because you don't feel, but because you're not afraid of feeling. Let me share something about the relationship between authenticity and untouchability that might surprise you. Most people think that being untouchable means being stoic, controlled, never showing weakness, always composed. But that's not authenticity. That's performance. That's a mask. Real untouchability, the kind that lasts, the kind that's sustainable, requires authenticity. It requires you to be genuinely yourself, not some carefully curated version of yourself. Because when you're performing, you're always at risk of someone seeing through the performance. You're always worried about maintaining the image. You're always on guard. But when you're authentic, when you're genuinely being yourself, there's nothing to protect, no image to maintain, no mask to keep in place. You're just you, and that's incredibly freeing. Yes, this means showing vulnerability sometimes. It means admitting when you don't know something. It means expressing genuine emotion. It means being imperfect in public, and that might seem counterintuitive. How can being vulnerable make you untouchable? Isn't vulnerability the opposite of untouchability? No, because real vulnerability, chosen vulnerability with people who have earned your trust, creates deep connection. And that connection is what actually makes you resilient. When you have people who really know you, who see all of you and accept all of you, you stop being so dependent on everyone else's approval. You stop needing to perform for strangers. You stop caring what people who don't really know you think about you, because you have something real, something authentic, something that actually nourishes you. Surface-level connections can't do that. Relationships built on performance can't do that. Only authentic, vulnerable connection can do that. So authenticity doesn't make you more touchable. It makes you more grounded, more secure, less dependent on external validation. And that's what makes you untouchable. Not the performance of strength, but the genuine security of knowing who you are and being accepted for it. This is important to understand. Real untouchability doesn't come from being invulnerable. It comes from being so securely rooted in yourself, so connected to people who really know you, that surface-level opinions and judgments just don't matter anymore. You're not performing for an audience. You're living your life, and that's powerful. We need to talk about failure, because your relationship with it is probably keeping you stuck. You're terrified of failure, of making mistakes, of looking foolish, of being wrong, and so you play it safe. You don't try things you might not succeed at. You don't take risks. You stay in your comfort zone. But here's the truth. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than you've probably even tried. The difference is they didn't let failure define them. They didn't take it as evidence that they were inadequate or incapable. They took it as information, as feedback, as a natural part of the learning process. And then they tried again. Different approach, new strategy, adjusted based on what they learned from the failure. This is what emotional untouchability allows. The freedom to fail without being destroyed by it. The ability to try things, to risk things, to put yourself out there, knowing that even if it doesn't work out, you'll be okay. Because your worth is not determined by your success rate. Your value is not dependent on always getting it right. You're worthy simply because you exist. You're valuable simply because you're human. Success and failure are just outcomes. They're not identity. They're not worth. They're just information about whether a particular approach worked in a particular situation. When you internalize this, when you really believe it, failure stops being so terrifying. And when failure stops being terrifying, you start taking more chances, trying more things, living more fully, because you're not paralyzed by the fear of getting it wrong. You know that even if you fail, even if you make a mistake, even if it doesn't work out, you're still okay. You'll learn from it and try again. This is freedom. This is what it means to be untouchable. Not that you never fail, but that failure doesn't destroy you. It just redirects you. So start reframing failure. Start seeing it as necessary feedback rather than evidence of inadequacy. Start understanding that every mistake is just information about what doesn't work, which brings you closer to what does. And give yourself permission to fail, to be imperfect, to get it wrong sometimes, because that's how you grow. That's how you learn. That's how you become more than you currently are. Perfect people don't exist. People who never fail don't exist. What exists is people who fail and keep going. People who make mistakes and learn from them. People who fall and get back up. Be one of those people. Embrace failure as part of the process. And watch how it transforms your life when you're no longer held back by the fear of getting it wrong. Let's talk about the concept of enough, because your relationship with this word is probably causing you enormous suffering. You don't feel like enough. You don't feel good enough, smart enough, successful enough, attractive enough. There's always something more you need to be. Something more you need to achieve, something more you need to prove before you can finally be enough. But here's the truth. Enough is not a destination. It's not something you arrive at by accumulating achievements or fixing all your flaws. Enough is a decision. It's something you choose to believe about yourself regardless of your circumstances. Because the goalpost of enough keeps moving. You think, when I get this job, I'll be enough. Then you get the job and the goalpost moves. When I make this much money, I'll be enough. Then you make that money and the goalpost moves again. There's always more. Always something else. Always another level. And if your sense of being enough is dependent on reaching some external milestone, you'll never get there. You'll spend your entire life chasing it. The alternative is to decide right now that you're enough, exactly as you are. Not because you've achieved everything, not because you're perfect, but simply because you're human, and humans don't have to earn their worth. You're enough because you exist. That's it. That's the whole equation. And when you really internalize this, when you stop making your worth contingent on external validation or achievement, you become untouchable in a profound way. Because if you're already enough, what can anyone take from you? If you're not trying to prove something, what can criticism really do to you? If you're not seeking validation, what power does rejection have? This is not arrogance. This is not thinking you're better than anyone else. This is just recognizing your inherent worth as a human being. Worth that doesn't need to be earned or proven or demonstrated. You're enough, right now, in this moment. With all your flaws and failures and imperfections, you're enough. And from that place of knowing you're enough, you can grow and change and improve without it being about fixing something that's broken. It's just about becoming more of who you are, expressing more of your potential, not because you need, to in order to be worthy, but because you want to. That's a completely different energy, and it changes everything. So practice telling yourself this regularly, daily. I am enough, not I will be enough when, just I am enough, period. And notice how that shifts things. Notice how it takes the desperate edge off everything. Notice how it allows you to breathe. Notice how it creates space for actual joy instead of constant striving. You're enough. You've always been enough. You will always be enough, independent of what you do or achieve or become. That's the truth. And when you believe it, when you really live from it, you become genuinely untouchable. As we come to the close of this journey together, I want to leave you with one final truth. This work never ends, and that's not a bad thing. You don't arrive at a place where you're finally done with your emotional work, where you've healed everything and integrated everything, and you're just perfect forever. That's not how it works. As long as you're alive, as long as you're growing, as long as you're engaging with life, new challenges will arise. New wounds will need healing. New parts will need integrating. New levels of understanding will open up, and that's beautiful. That's not a failure. That's the nature of being alive. You're always growing, always evolving, always becoming more of who you truly are. The goal is not to reach some static state of perfection. The goal is to develop the capacity to work with whatever arises, to trust yourself to handle whatever comes, to know that you have the tools and the skills and the awareness to meet life as it unfolds. This is what it means to be untouchable. Not that nothing ever affects you, but that you have unshakable faith in your ability to work with whatever does affect you. You might still feel pain. You might still struggle sometimes. You might still have days where you're triggered or reactive or struggling to cope, but you know how to work with those experiences now. You have practices. You have tools. You have awareness. You're not at the mercy of your emotions anymore. You're in partnership with them. And that's the transformation. Not becoming someone who never struggles, but becoming someone who knows how to work with struggle, who knows how to process pain, who knows how to integrate challenges. You've learned what you needed to learn. You've been given the framework. You understand the principles. Now it's about practice, about application, about showing up for yourself day after day, choice after choice, moment after moment. And know that you don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to get it right every time. You just have to keep showing up, keep choosing awareness, keep committing to your growth. That's enough. That's always been enough. You showing up for yourself, doing your best, learning as you go. Thank you for being here for this journey. Thank you for being willing to look honestly at yourself and your patterns. Thank you for being courageous enough to face what you've been avoiding. Thank you for committing to your own transformation. This is the work that changes everything, not just for you, but for everyone you encounter, every person you influence, every life you touch. When you heal yourself, you heal the world. When you become conscious, you raise consciousness. When you integrate, you invite others to integrate. So keep going, keep growing, keep becoming. The world needs more people who have done this work, more people who are conscious and integrated and whole. And remember, Midnight Audiobooks is here with you on this journey. We'll keep creating content that supports your growth. We'll keep exploring these depths together. We'll keep providing the wisdom and the tools and the community you need to keep moving forward. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The beginning of living as your true self. The beginning of being genuinely untouchable. The beginning of freedom. Welcome to your transformation. Welcome to your power. Welcome home to yourself. One more essential piece before we part ways, the practice of gratitude in the context of emotional mastery. You might have heard about gratitude practices before, but let me reframe this for you in a way that actually connects to becoming untouchable. Gratitude is not about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's not about dismissing your pain or struggles. That's spiritual bypassing, and it doesn't help. Real gratitude is about recognizing what's working, even while acknowledging what's not. It's about seeing the full picture of your life, not just the parts that hurt. When you're in pain, when you're struggling, when you're going through something difficult, your brain naturally narrows its focus to the problem. This is a survival mechanism. Your brain is trying to protect you by focusing on the threat. But that narrow focus can become a trap. You start to see only what's wrong, only what hurts, only what's broken, and you lose sight of everything else. Gratitude practice is about intentionally widening your aperture, not to minimize the pain, but to see the context. Yes, this thing hurts, and also these other things are okay. Both can be true. This is not about being polite or well-mannered. This is about regulating your nervous system. When you're in a state of gratitude, you literally cannot be in a state of fear at the same time. They're neurologically incompatible. So practicing gratitude, especially when things are hard, is a way of signaling to your nervous system that you're not in immediate danger, that there are still good things in your life, that it's safe to relax even just a little. And from that slightly more relaxed state, you can think more clearly. You can make better decisions. You can access more of your resources. You're not operating purely from survival mode. This is practical emotional regulation, dressed up as a spiritual practice. And it works, but here's the key. It has to be genuine. You can't just recite a list of things you should be grateful for. You have to actually feel it. Find small, specific things that genuinely bring you a sense of appreciation when you think about them. Maybe it's your coffee this morning. Maybe it's your comfortable bed. Maybe it's a friend who checked in on you. Maybe it's just the fact that you're breathing and alive. Start small, start specific, start genuine, and build from there. Over time, this practice rewires your brain. You start to naturally notice good things alongside difficult things. You start to hold a more balanced perspective. You start to recognize that even in hard times, there are still moments of beauty, of connection, of grace, and this makes you more resilient, because you're not just surviving the hard times. You're also finding moments of nourishment within them, moments that sustain you, moments that remind you why you keep going. This is another dimension of being untouchable. When you can hold both the difficulty and the beauty, when you can acknowledge the pain while also recognizing what sustains you, you become more stable, more grounded, harder to knock off balance. Because you're not living in a binary world where everything is either all good or all bad. You're living in the nuanced reality where multiple things can be true at once. And that's a much more accurate, much more resilient way to relate to life. Now, let's address something crucial that we've touched on throughout, but needs to be said explicitly: the role of professional support in this work. Everything we've discussed here is powerful. These practices, these insights, these frameworks can absolutely transform your life. But they're not a replacement for professional help when you need it. If you're dealing with severe trauma, clinical depression, anxiety disorders, or any other significant mental health challenges, please work with a qualified therapist or counselor. These tools are supplements to professional care, not substitutes for it. There's no shame in needing help. There's no weakness in therapy. In fact, seeking professional support when you need it is one of the most emotionally mature things you can do. A good therapist can help you navigate territory that's too difficult to explore alone. They can provide tools and techniques specific to your situation. They can offer a safe container for processing things that feel too overwhelming to face by yourself. Think of it this way: you can learn a lot about fitness from videos and books, but sometimes you need a personal trainer, someone who can assess your specific situation, identify what you specifically need, and guide you through it with expertise. Same with emotional work. You can learn a lot on your own, but sometimes you need professional guidance. And that's not a failure, that's being smart about your healing. So if you're resonating with this content but feeling like it's not enough, like you need more support, please reach out to a mental health professional. You deserve that support. You deserve expert guidance through your healing journey. This is not about dependence or weakness. This is about using all available resources to become the healthiest, most whole version of yourself. And sometimes that includes professional help. Don't let pride or shame or fear keep you from getting the support you need. You wouldn't try to set your own broken bone. Don't try to heal severe psychological wounds entirely on your own either. Get the help you need. Do the work. Heal completely. That's what being untouchable really means. Being so committed to your well-being that you'll do whatever it takes to achieve it. Before we truly close, I want to speak directly to those of you who have experienced significant trauma. Everything we've discussed applies to you too, but I want to acknowledge that your path might be more complex. Healing from trauma is not a linear process. It's not something you can think your way through or will your way through. Trauma lives in your body. It affects your nervous system. It shapes how you perceive and respond to the world. And healing from it requires patience, professional support, and tremendous self-compassion. You might have moments where you feel like you're making progress, and then suddenly you're triggered and it feels like you're back at square one. That's normal. That's not failure. That's how trauma healing works. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes 1 step forward, 2 steps back. The path is not straight, but it does lead somewhere if you keep walking it. And please hear this: what happened to you was not your fault. The trauma you experienced, the pain you endured, that was done to you. You didn't cause it. You didn't deserve it. And you're not broken because of it. You're wounded, and wounds can heal. It takes time. It takes support. It takes proper care. But healing is possible. You can become untouchable even with a traumatic past. You can develop emotional mastery even if your emotions feel chaotic and overwhelming right now. You can build a life of peace and stability, even if that seems impossible from where you're standing. But it will take work, probably more work than people without your history. And that's not fair. It's not fair that you have to work harder because of what was done to you. But that's the reality, and denying it doesn't help. So acknowledge the unfairness. Grieve it if you need to. And then commit to doing the work anyway. Not because you have to, but because you deserve to live free from the control of your past. You deserve to reclaim your life. You deserve to feel safe in your own body. You deserve to experience joy without constant hypervigilance. You deserve peace. And it's possible. Trauma does not have to be a life sentence. With proper support, with commitment to healing, with patience and self-compassion, you can transform your relationship with your past. You can reach a place where, yes, it happened, but it no longer defines you. It no longer controls you. It's part of your story, but it's not the whole story. And it's not the end of the story. Keep going. Keep healing. Keep fighting for your freedom. You're worth it. As we truly come to the end, I want to leave you with a practice. Something concrete you can do starting today. Every morning when you wake up, before you check your phone, before you do anything else, take 3 deep breaths. Just 3 slow, deep, intentional breaths. And as you breathe, set an intention for the day. Not a goal, not a to-do list. An intention for how you want to show up. Maybe it's, I choose awareness today. Maybe it's, I choose compassion for myself today. Maybe it's, I choose to respond rather than react today. Just one simple intention. Something you can come back to throughout the day when you feel yourself slipping into old patterns. And then at night, before you sleep, take 3 more deep breaths and reflect on the day. Not to judge yourself, not to critique your performance, but simply to notice. Where did you succeed in living your intention? Where did you struggle? What did you learn? Just observe, without judgment. Just gentle, curious observation. This simple bookend practice, morning intention, evening reflection, creates a container for your day. It keeps you connected to your growth. It builds awareness. It supports all the other work we've discussed. And it takes maybe 5 minutes total. 3 minutes in the morning, 2 at night. Anyone can do that. But those 5 minutes done consistently will change your life because they create space. Space between you and your automatic reactions. Space for choice. Space for consciousness. And it's in that space that transformation happens. So start there. Start with the breathing. Start with the intention. Start with the reflection. And build from there. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. You don't have to implement everything we've discussed immediately. Just start with this one practice, and let it grow naturally from there. Small, consistent steps create massive change over time. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Keep showing up. You've been given the map. You've been shown the territory. Now it's time to walk the path. Your path in your own time, in your own way. And remember, Midnight Audiobooks is here with you. Subscribe so you don't miss new content. Engage with this material. Share it with others who might benefit. Build your community of conscious growth, because you don't have to do this alone. None of us do, We're all walking this path together, each on our own journey, but connected by our commitment to consciousness, to growth, to becoming who we're meant to be. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for choosing to do this work. The world is better because you're choosing to heal, because you're choosing consciousness, because you're choosing to become untouchable, not through hardness, but through wholeness. This is your journey. This is your transformation. This is your life. Live it fully. Feel it deeply. Choose it consciously. You're ready. You've always been ready. Now go become who you were always meant to be. This is Midnight Audiobooks.